All right, so today we're diving into Ezekiel's prophecy, and specifically those excerpts you sent over from the Enduring Word commentary about his vision of a future temple. And I think what's so fascinating about this is we're not just talking about like blueprints and bricks, right?
Right.
We're talking about God's return, his standards for his people, and honestly a glimpse into what a society built on his ideals could actually look like.
It's amazing how much detail Ezekiel packs into this vision, you know? It's like he's walking through with like a notepad and writing down every single thing he sees, but it's not just architectural. It's like I said, it's full of meaning.
So let's start with that grand return.
Yeah.
God's glory comes back, but it's not like he's just, casually strolling in. It's like this explosion of glory through the east gate, the same gate it left from earlier in Ezekiel's prophecies.
Yeah, and that's not just a cool visual. That's huge. When God left before, it was hesitant, almost mournful. This time it's like this overwhelming flood of glory filling the temple. Can you imagine if you were one of those Israelites living through exile, longing for God, and then you see that day? It's God saying, I'm back, and I'm here to stay. No more back and forth.
Oh man, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. And speaking of that East Gate talk about exclusive access, once God's glory is in, boom, permanently sealed shut.
Yeah.
Even the prince, this future Davidic ruler Ezekiel talks about, he can't even pass through.
Yeah, it's like the super exclusive club, right? It's
Right.
really this powerful image of how some things are just reserved for God. It's not about exclusion, it's about recognizing how awesome and untouchable God's presence really is.
It really makes you think about those do not enter signs we might have in our own lives when it comes to connecting with God.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there's this whole hierarchy of holiness that really stood out to me. Ezekiel's very specific about who can enter the temple.
Yeah, and it goes back to those Old Testament covenants, Foreigners who haven't pledged allegiance to God, they're still on the outside. It's like a direct response to all that idolatry and unfaithfulness that marked Israel's history.
And it's not even a clean slate for everyone inside the covenant either. The Levites, for example, those were the folks who helped the priests.
Right.
But remember how they wandered off the path too?
Oh yeah, they don't get off scot-free. They're given tasks in the temple, but it's nothing like the priest's duties. It's God's mercy, but he's not just sweeping things under the rug. It reminds us that our actions have consequences even generations later.
Which honestly is still so relevant today. Our decisions echo, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
But then you have the sons of Zadok. These were priests who stayed faithful during some really rebellious times. And guess what?
Yeah.
They're the only ones allowed to offer sacrifices in Ezekiel's temple.
Talk about a divine performance review, right? It's like God saying character and integrity are non-negotiable, especially if you're serving me. It's not just about going through the motions, it's about what's in your heart.
So we've got these priests, meticulously chosen, entering this temple that just screams holy ground, but it's not just about who gets in, right?
Yeah.
What's happening inside?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Ezekiel's vision, it's not just about a building, it's about like a whole system, a way of life. And remember those sons of Zadok, the chosen priests?
Yeah.
They had one big job sacrifices.
The sacrifices,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so sacrifices in the Old Testament, I'll be honest, sometimes they feel a little, brutal to us modern folks.
Yeah.
Lots of blood and fire. Not exactly a Sunday picnic.
Yeah, it's easy to get stuck on the visuals, but for the Israelites, sacrifices weren't about the gore, it was about connection. Each sacrifice had a purpose, a message being sent to God. It's like they were speaking a language through ritual and symbolism.
Okay, so break it down for me. What kind of sacrificial language were they speaking?
All right, so think of it like a divine menu. You've got your burnt offerings. Those were all about total surrender,
Yeah.
holding nothing back. Then you've got your grain offerings. It's like saying thank you for a good harvest, acknowledging God's provision. And of course, you can't forget those peace offerings. Those were often tied to celebrations and fellowship. Kind of like a divinely ordained barbecue.
I love the divine barbecue. It's amazing how these ancient rituals still resonate with something as universal as like sharing a meal together.
Totally, but then you have the sin offerings. These were huge. They were the cornerstone of seeking forgiveness and restoring that broken relationship with God.
And it's interesting because even in Ezekiel's vision of this future temple, during a time of peace and righteousness, guess what? Sin offerings were still happening.
Yeah.
Why is that? Were they just expecting people to mess up, even in paradise?
Well, it's easy to think of this future temple as some utopia where everyone's perfectly holy, right? But here's the thing about us humans. We're wired for imperfection. Even when we're trying our best, we're going to stumble.
So even in this future ideal, there's still this need for grace for forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what gets me? The prince, that future Davidic ruler, He was actually required to offer sacrifices for unintentional sins.
Wow.
Think about those times you mess up without even realizing it. God provided a way to make things right even then.
It's reassuring.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect. It's about having that system that way to acknowledge when we fall short and be made whole again.
Right. It's like a reset button. And this attention to detail, it wasn't just about the temple either, Ezekiel's vision. It goes even deeper into how their society actually functions.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, Ezekiel talks about weights and measures,
Right.
specific guidelines for them. It's like God was saying, if you want a society that reflects who I am, it has to start with honesty, even how you measure out grain.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought about it like that. But it makes sense. You can't have justice if everyone's cheating the system, even in small ways.
Exactly. It's like those little things we do when we think no one's watching, right? That's what matters.
It's a high bar, though. It makes you think twice about those times when we cut corners or tell a little white lie.
We all do it, right? But imagine a society where honesty was just the default, where fairness was totally normal. That's the world. Ezekiel's describing a world transformed by God's holiness.
Yeah, but here's where I get a little tripped up. We're talking about this future temple, a restored Israel, this time of peace and righteousness. It seems kind of, unbelievable.
Yeah.
How does this ancient blueprint even work in our world?
Yeah.
With all its chaos and, imperfection.
Oh, I totally get it. It's easy to get lost in the details and think, well, that's nice for them, but I'm just trying to get through my day.
Right.
But the power of Ezekiel's vision, it's not in those literal details. It's in the principles, God's heart for justice, for authentic worship, for a restored relationship with his people. Those are timeless.
So it's less about building a physical temple and more about cultivating those same values in our own lives, our own communities.
Exactly. It's like asking ourselves, how can I be a person of integrity even when it's tough? How can I show grace and forgiveness when someone messes up? It's about bringing that future hope into our present.
So we become, in a sense, living temples, reflecting God's presence through what we do, how we choose to live, how we treat each other.
Now you're getting it. It's not some far-off dream. It's an invitation to be part of something so much bigger than ourselves. And it starts right here, right now.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Honestly, a little daunting.
Yeah.
But also incredibly hopeful. To know that even with all the messiness in our world, there's this bigger story unfolding. A story of redemption, of restoration, of justice winning in the end.
That's the beauty of digging into scripture like this. We uncover these ancient truths that are still so powerful. They challenge us, inspire us, and ultimately they point us towards a future filled with hope.
Well, there you have it, folks. Another deep dive successfully navigated. We journey through ancient prophecies, unpack so much meaning, and hopefully spark some fresh insights into what it means to live in light of God's incredible vision.
And you know what? Maybe those ancient blueprints still have more wisdom for us to uncover.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the extraordinary truths that shape our lives.
In a world of noise and uncertainty, there is a voice that still speaks, ancient yet ever relevant. This voice belongs to the major prophets. Journal through the Bible. Part 4 invites you to journey through the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. These are not just stories of old, they are messages of hope, warning, and redemption for today. Read 3 chapters a day alongside a global community of believers. Discover timeless truths that transform and prepare you for the future. Join our daily voice and video chats, where we journal through the Bible together, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. Share your insights, hear others' perspectives, and grow in faith. Don't journey alone. Let the voice of the prophets speak to you, and through you, to the world. Join us today. Invite a friend, and together, we'll uncover the treasures of Scripture. Go to journalthroughthebible.com to start.